Well, hey, Scott, I just have a question for you as we get started today.
Yeah. What is
Have
it,
you ever
Chris?
slept with 100 guys?
No, I have not. And
That would
thank
be
God
quite
I
an-
haven't.
Yeah, that's a lot of, as they say, pushing it in. That's a lot of that I don't really know if I want in my life. But there was a girl who did that, and she has a story, and we want to talk about it
Coming up next.
on We Got Balls. Hey guys, welcome back to We Got Balls, and today we want to talk about hookup sex. We want to talk about what is sex like when you just put it out there and say, listen, I had an analogy that a friend of mine told me one time. He said, sex is kind of like helping a friend move. Not a big deal. You just kind of go and, hang out for a little while and see what it's like. And it's no big deal. And sometimes I hook up with people that I don't like. Sometimes I hook up with people that I like. But it's just an experience. It's not that big of a deal. But that can always go to an extreme. As we've talked about in the intro, that there was a girl who hooked up with 100 guys in one time. What was that like? How can that be helpful or harmful for us?
Yeah, so just to give you the backstory on that story, she was an OnlyFans performer and sex worker, as they're called now. And she wanted to promote her OnlyFans page. And so she thought the best way to do this, and apparently her mother's her business manager and helped out with this decision, is I'm going to sleep with 100 guys in 24 hours. And I'm going to kind of record that and do it as a promotion for my OnlyFans site. And it seemed very cavalier and nonchalant and very modern and very sex positive until the aftermath starts to hit her and she realizes what she's done. And after the first 100 guy episode, the next way to ramp that up was I'm going to sleep with 1,000 guys in 24 hours. And she's come out.
Wait. Let's do the math on that.
Well, what is the math on that?
I think that's 8 guys a minute. No,
Seriously?
no, I can't do my math right. So that would be 8. Let's see, 24 into 1,000. We'll get our calculators out here.
I'm getting my calculator out of my eye.
40 guys an hour. 40 guys an hour, or so. And then that would be...
That's a poke a minute, at least.
Yeah, that's about a poke a minute. Yeah, that's a
so you're
lot
not. So it's probably just sticking the penis in and pulling it out, or back and forth. You better be.
That's high quality sex, I must say.
High quality sex, and that's a lot of jizz too. And
if you can even get them to come in that 1 minute time.
Oh, they probably make him kind of get ready to go and just you get a poke, and that's about. Go.
Crazy.
Stop.
So so that's how you up it. You get 1,000 in 24 hours. Wow.
And then where do you go?
Yeah,
do you start doing double penetrations, triple penetrations, 2 in the vagina, 1 in the anus? How about quadruple? Like, here's the point of all of this is, and we're going to do an episode after this on chaotic sexuality, but I think where we're seeing kind of the cultural moment go is this just hookup kind of sex culture. It's going actually in 2 ways. One is guys seem to be checking out of sexuality with other people altogether and just withdrawing to pornography and masturbating. Or there's another contingent, probably, and the bell curve is right. You've got people at the end of these curves, and then you've got lots of hooking up going on with apps like Grindr, Scruff on the gay sex side, and you've got Tinder and
Hinge and Bumble on the straight side,
on the straight side, or whatever, the pan side. So we wanted to talk about hookup, and when we're talking about hookup, this story seemed to be emblematic of kind of that mentality that under the guise of sex positivity, because she's consented to having sex with 100 guys in 24 hours. So under the kind of postmodern idea of, well, this is very sex positive, right? We're not going to stigmatize this. We're not going to shame this. And we're not trying to shame this young girl for what she did. She's 23 years old. So she's I'm interested in kind of what her sexual development story is, where she gets to a place where it seems like a good idea to her and her mother to engage in intercourse with 100 men over the course of a 24-hour period. But when you look at the positivity behind the sexual act, it seemed to be breaking down because she came out after the fact, and after she announced she was going to do 1,000 guys, she's breaking down, realizing she made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is that you can be sex positive in the sense of there's not really any rules beyond consent and pleasure. Like we're assuming she had some kind of pleasure in this, although that's questionable, right? But
Right.
how much tender, loving care is she getting from each of these 100 random dudes? We're also assuming that the dudes are getting off. Like they're just complete predators for doing this. I've heard some of that from feminists criticizing this. Oh, they're taking advantage of her, but she did consent to it. And yet we're not talking about, well, what kind of guy is going to line up in front of another 100 dudes and want to get everybody's sloppy seconds or thirds or fourths or whatever. So,
well, this goes back to, I think, a couple things. First of all, how the hookup culture came to be, and we could go do a deep dive there. But the one thing that comes to mind is, so about 4 or 5 years ago, there's a podcast that's very popular now called Call Her Daddy. Have you ever heard of Call Her Daddy before?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the Call Her Daddy podcast started with two girls who were in their early 20s. And they were talking about their sex lives, and they were putting it out there, all the things that they were doing. And they would refer to themselves as holes, HOLES. I'm a hole. I'm a hole. And that was kind of that was their identifying feature of themselves in this hookup culture narrative, that my role is to be a hole. And yeah, I get off on it sometimes, but that's just what I do, who I am. And obviously the guys who were having sex with them were the dicks. So there was just the dicks and the holes. And that was the names, the nomenclature in a hookup culture of what it really meant to be, what their real value was. And I think when we look at how this came to be and how hookup sex has really impacted us, we got to go back and understand, okay, there's a historical element to this that led to this place where the first thing that I need to do to get to know somebody is have sex with them. Like that's what hookup culture is defined as. My sexual compatibility is the most important thing. So I meet you, I find out you're not a serial killer, I find out you're not a total, piece of shit, and I feel like I might be able to have some level of empathy towards you. So now we jump right into bed, or even more extreme, I think, on different sides of the spectrum, is the just a straight show up at a place and start having sex, not even knowing your name kind of culture, where it's whether it's a glory hole or it's a park, or I think that's much more prevalent in the gay lifestyle, but because there's not a risk of especially men, there's not a risk of pregnancy, so I don't have to worry about if I have sex with you that I'm going to be stuck with a baby. But the reality is, it's kind of across the board, whether it's social hooking up or non-social hooking up. There's this belief in the culture that I'm only worth being a hole or a dick.
Yeah, so it's interesting because as you're talking about that level of objectification that kind of reduces me down to body parts, it seems like that has to have been aided by kind of porn culture going mainstream, with internet porn coming about. And that when you're engaged in an act of looking at pornography repeatedly while you're masturbating, you're kind of training yourself to be a voyeur in a sense, which is removing yourself from first party sex and really putting yourself in a third person kind of viewer of the act instead of a participant. And this to me seems like a logical extension of that, because if I've trained myself enough to consider other people as objects, it is impossible for me to then not objectify myself in that process as well, too, because all I am is a dick and all they are is a hole or another dick. And so if I'm doing that repeatedly, the natural consequence of that would be, after I've rehearsed that for thousands of hours from the time I'm 8 or 9 years old, doing that repeatedly with pornography or erotic role playing kind of scenarios online or sexting, I am training myself to think of myself as just body parts. And I've already seen these other people as body parts. So the natural extension of that is, if I want to take that to the real world instead of just maintain this virtual anonymity all the time, I'm going to have sex in the same way that I've been having sex. I basically condition myself to be an object and other people to be an object. And that's where I think hookup culture is the natural progression of the sexual revolution, like free love. There are no strings attached. But I don't think in the 70s they viewed sex quite as libertine as it is now. It's just like,
well, it wasn't perfunctory. It was, yes, I can have sex with anybody I want to, and I can have sex with many different partners, and I can, and sexuality was still fairly well baked into a relational dynamic. But I think as you were talking with the pornification of culture, what that really has led me to is I don't want to do the hard work of getting to know someone. I don't want to do the hard work of relationship. I just want the orgasm.
Yeah. So I'm just listening. I just listened to a really interesting Huberman Lab podcast with Jordan Peterson. And it was really surprising how this podcast took this very symbolic, talking a lot about a lot of things. Pornography was in there, masturbation was in there. But they talked about the formation of society, the deterioration of society. And one of the things that they were talking about that I thought was so interesting is that this kind of and Jordan brought up, because he's written a lot about biblical stuff in a very symbolic way. And he looks at it as a psychoanalyst taking that stuff apart. And sometimes I think that works well and sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, he was talking about, kind of the vision of the end of society that's in the book of Revelation. And you get the whore of Babylon sitting atop a many-headed beast. And the beast is kind of male, patriarchal, governmental culture that then basically takes advantage of a woman's sexuality and commodifies it. So the whore of Babylon is the mother of all prostitutes, and it's really graphic imagery, and they're talking about this, but the vision here is the end of all society ends with the disintegration of kind of traditional containment structures like government, and it dissolves into this chaotic sexuality. And I thought that was really an interesting observation from, Peterson doesn't claim to be a Christian or religious in particular. I think he's looking at these things as kind of archetypal explanations. And, and they talked about the girl that had sex with 100 guys and just how everybody's aware of this in culture now. Everybody's been talking about this on X for 2 months now. And the fact that the girl has come out expressing a lot of psychological distress about what happened, and it's very disturbing to a lot of people. So you're kind of seeing where this goes. And I think what we're inviting guys to in this consideration, because what porn is training you to do is basically go on an adventure that requires no sacrifice and it requires no responsibility. And therefore, it's not really doing anything for you. It's not helping you grow and flourish. And that's the point that they got into.
Say more about that, because I don't really understand that piece. So when you're saying that because again, my friend who helps people move and has sex, I don't know if it's at the same time, but different times, but it's the same thing for him. In his mind, sexuality is just merely an exchange of services. It's really just, I show up and, we get naked and I make you happy, you make me happy, that we both get something out of this. And then we move on with our lives because I'm a sexual person. And if I've had this sexual experience with somebody, at least I've had something. At least there's something in my life that feels connective, and someone is willing to get naked with me or show themselves to me, whatever way that was. And that seems like enough. And so you're saying that there's something deeper that I'm missing when I just see sexuality in this way.
Very transactional.
Yeah.
And
So let's, because I think we need to get really nitty gritty on what transactional means versus some other idea of sexuality that's different that may build into something maybe more long term.
so, and I agreed with kind of the typology and the symbolism that they were talking about in this podcast, the Huberman Labs podcast I'm referring to. Like in the design of our neurobiology, whether you look at this from an evolutionary standpoint or you bring theology, kind of spiritual, religious frameworks into this, there is a sense in which human beings are created to do something, right? There is a drive within us to actually be productive, to be engaging, and particularly with men. Not that women don't play a role in creation, but they play a very specific kind of, in a traditional sense, they're bringing forth the next generation and raising them. But men are kind of shaping the world. Men are engaging the world.
You mean making things happen, bringing things into being, being a part of a creative process that brings things out of bigger things out of small things, or maybe out of nothing.
It's bringing order to chaos, first of all, metaphorically speaking. Like the universe is created in a state of chaos, and God orders it, and then we're to order it in a religious view. But from a purely biological, evolutionary view, things go from really simple to more and more complex. And so there's an order that emerges out of creation. And so when you look at what is the human role in this, as creatures, we're the most sophisticated. We choose targets at a distance and we aim for them, right?
Okay.
That's why we throw balls, we shoot arrows, we go hunting. There's this specific thing of we're seeking something in the world, and we're seeking to bring a sense of meaning and order out of those things in the world and to create in that process. So
there's something that we're designed to do, and I'll add a layer to this. It's not just that we're universally designed to do, we're uniquely designed to do as individuals. There's a place that I will take life that you will not take life because we're different. Right. And so the creative, the productive process of I would say it's a uniquely masculine trait, but there may be women who do this as well. So I won't say that it's siloed to just men. I think it's masculine energy in the world, which brings goodness and order based upon what I'm interested in and what I'm gifted to do. And so that type of thing bleeds into relationship. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And so in the ancient Middle East, you get all these creation mythologies where the god or the gods subdue the chaos dragon or the chaos monster that lives in the sea, because the sea represents chaoticness. It's waves, it's crashing upon the land, and it's disordered. And so the gods impose order on the unstructured reality of physical properties by subduing them. And man then becomes an agent of the gods to impose order in the natural world, not creating out of nothing or primordial stuff, but taking the existing stuff and ordering it and making sense out of it. So what's the ultimate expression of that? The fundamental unit of that is having sex with a human being that produces another human life. That is what the ultimate target to bring creative order out of, passionate chaos is intended for.
But again, we're free, Scott. We're free love, man. What are you talking about? I'm not having a bunch of kids. I might have 2 kids in my life, and definitely when I'm ready for it, when I'm prepared, when I'm mature, when things are structured. There's so many other contraceptive means of not having a baby that sex is not about having babies. You're taking it into this real traditional mindset, Scott. Come on.
So you have to nestle this then in the neurobiological reality that we are created to seek out targets that we can aim at and then that we can impose our will on. And so in sex, what is the target of the activity? What is the goal? Is it merely pleasure?
It's hot people. I want to make a life. I want to have sex with hot people who can make my life feel good. And maybe if we end up having a kid together, they'll be hot too. And then they can continue this narrative. Because, listen, I get it, buddy. You're really smart and you're theologically and philosophically deep. But I'm talking about hooking up, dude. I'm talking about hooking up.
Well, it just so happens
on the level of why the heck does it matter that I hook up?
Here's the thing that does matter is the way our minds work is on stories. We are always telling stories, right?
Yeah.
And so our sexuality is telling a story.
Yes.
And it's seeking a purpose. So this is going back to this kind of mythological, what's the purpose of story? Joseph Campbell's man with, kind of the hero's journey. Like, the reason that works as an archetype is because it's real. It's how we operate in the world. Everything that we do in our minds has a beginning, middle, and end. And there is a goal to everything that we do then. And so you have to think about if the goal of sex is just conquering people, what is that really doing, right? Without sacrifice or without effort, it doesn't do anything.
Well, let's say what it's really doing. It's numbing me out. That's what it's really doing. Because all that I don't want to be a hero. I just want to survive. And when I'm active in hooking up with other people, whether it's via a voyeuristic means with porn and masturbation, or with actually hooking up with other people, I don't really care about the hero's journey. I don't care about the relationship. I don't care about the longevity. I just want to, in my body, in that moment, not think and feel about all the shit in my life right now. And I want to go numb. Because that's what helps me feel better right now.
In the moment, that's true.
Yes.
But after a couple of years of doing that, Chris, you're going to find yourself struggling with a lot of mental illness. And that's what's happening to people. You're going to feel lonely.
With mental illness. It's been going on for a long time.
It can get worse.
Because I think if we give people a too deep of an answer, it's not going to address the felt needs. And the felt needs are very much this. Yes, there's a deeper story. We want to invite you into a deeper story around your sexuality. We want you to tell your story around your sexuality. That's one of the questions we ask guys when we're doing coaching is, tell me about how you discovered sexuality. Was it taught to you? Was it not taught to you? Was it abusive? Was it consensual? Well, how did you learn to be a sexual human being? And so that's a big piece in that. But in the moment, to get someone to see the real meaning in my hooking up, in my trying to have a quick, cheap version of sex, I've got to address this issue is this working for me right now? And for some of you guys, the answer is going to be, sure it is. What's the big, I want to hook up more. If I just hooked up with this person or had this sexual experience, I would be perfectly content. But some of you guys have been down that road and you've told this story to yourself and it didn't work out. And you end up like this young lady who at 23 years old realizes having sex for sport, having sex for money, having sex to soothe my broken heart doesn't make me feel better.
And you and I both know guys that have had sex with hundreds, even thousands of people, Chris, right? Yep. And what is the universal experience of those guys after they've gone through that course of just kind of the stick it in, if I can just have sex with this person, I will be fulfilled. I will feel powerful. I will feel like I'm a man. What is everybody say after the course of that, whether it's 2 years of that or 30 years of that?
I think is what you said earlier. It's loneliness. It's regret.
I'm empty. I'm emptier than when I started.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And as a young person, just kind of going out and exploring your sexuality, that can seem very enlivening in the beginning because there's a lot of risk involved in hooking up with anonymous people. There's novelty every time I do it because it's a new person. So it adds that element. It's in a new location. I'm having new sex acts. That can be very intoxicating in the beginning as you're exploring sexuality with other people for the first time. If you're crossing over from the porn virtual world to the real world and you're finally getting the touch of another person and touching them, that can be really enlivening in the short term. But I can tell you, having worked with guys, having even done that myself, it gets to an end where it's like, I feel emptier after this, right?
Yep.
I don't feel any more fulfilled. I feel less fulfilled. And so I think we all intuitively know.
There's that pesky thing, that body count, right? So you get to the place where you're like, you know what a body count is, right?
Yeah. Isn't it?
When
how
you get to
how many people I've
20,
had sex with?
30, 40, 50, 100, 150. When that number starts getting up into the triple digits, your number starts to remind you, I've done this X many times and it still hasn't felt good.
Yeah.
It's felt a release in the moment, but I'm not a better person because of this.
Yeah. And I think the question that we ask guys to think about a lot at the retreats that we do, as well as the coaching that we do, is what are you really wanting? When you want to have sex with a person, what is it that you're really looking for? Forget about the orgasm. We all consider that to be kind of the table stakes of having sex. You want pleasure and you want orgasm. So let's take that off the table. What else do you want? What's beneath that? And be curious about that, and just be open-minded for a second and suspend your moral beliefs and your judgments and your religious duties and all of that stuff, and just ask the question, what am I really looking for when I want to have sex with the person that I want to have sex with? And if I'm engaging in sexuality that is really this kind of very transactional, I want to have sex with as many people as I possibly can, that becomes the goal. What's it doing for you? Why is that the goal? And how is that goal helping you? And is it actually accomplishing the thing you want? And most of the people that we've talked, I've never met a guy who is on this cycle of continual hooking up who says, this is the best sex I've ever had. I'm completely fulfilled. I feel like I've grown as a person because of this. I'm becoming the best version of myself. So let's look at it in that standpoint. What is it doing for me, right? So if the optimal version of Scott is to approximate something that is like the most perfect version of me that can possibly be imagined, whether from an evolutionary standpoint or from a religious standpoint, I can't, in any view of that, imagine where the best version of me is to have sex with as many people as I possibly can, that becomes part of the equation.
So tell me more about that. I'm very curious. And I obviously would share in your sentiment that the best version of me is not just sleeping with as many people as possible. What is it in your desire as a man that makes you say random casual sexuality is not going to lead me down the path of who I really want to be?
Because in that model of sexuality, the primary benefit is me. The primary beneficiary is me.
Yeah.
And there is no best version of me where I'm not thinking about other people. I'm just thinking about myself, because what we call that in psychology is a psychopath or a sociopath.
Right.
A psychopath or a sociopath is somebody who pursues their own aims. So again, we're talking about the target or the aim of my existence. Yeah. I'm a sociopath if I pursue my own aims at your expense, and I don't consider you. And there is no version of the best version of me where I'm not willing to make sacrifices at times for the good of other people. I don't think in an evolutionary standpoint or a religious standpoint, you get to the best version of you by just focusing on you.
But I also have to ask you, is hooking up really in your best interest? If you're just, let's take other people out of the equation. Let's ignore the fact that there's another human being that's being used as a hole or a dick in this equation. Let's ignore that. And let's just talk about you. If you just try to have sex with as many people as possible, as fast as possible, are you really being helped? Is it really benefiting you? What are the hidden costs of that way of looking at sexuality for you?
Well, it turns me into a piece of meat.
So you become the thing that you're treating other people as.
Yeah, I cannot treat other people like pieces of meat without turning myself into a piece of meat either,
Right.
which
Right.
basically says my primary purpose in life is to copulate.
Yeah. Well, or even worse, to be used as whatever I am, a dick or a hole or a sexual object.
Or to have sexual pleasure or orgasm. It's not even to create anything out of it. It's just the sole purpose of the act is to have the act.
Yeah.
So
okay, so let's stop there. The sole purpose is to have the act. Now, this is an old narrative we've talked about before. And it's an old narrative that says, if I just have the act, I'll be enough, or I'll be a man, or I'll be the person that I've always longed to be. But what I really am when I pursue that end is I really sell my soul. And we're not talking about any religious bullshit. We're talking about the core of who you believe you are. Selling your soul for an act. I will just give my body and my soul and my heart and my mind away for the chance to get pumped full of endorphins.
Yeah.
For the moment.
And you're living from a neurobiological standpoint, you're living at a very root level that a 2-year-old lives at, right? Because a 2-year-old pursues life as if they're the only person in the world. I want what I want when I want it.
And yet if you leave a 2-year-old on its own, it's going to kill itself.
and if you don't start to train a 2-year-old, by the time the kid gets to be 4 or 5, they're going to be an asshole and they're not going to have any friends.
True.
Because
let's get back to that base. Because what I want, when I say what do I really want, we have to. So what's the question that we ask guys when we say, hey, what do you want? And they give you so ask me the question, what do you want, Scott?
What do you want, Chris? What do you really want?
Dude, I just want to feel connected in my body, man. I love the feeling of sleeping with another person and us sharing touch together. And man, it just feels so good to just get off with that.
Okay. What feels good about it?
Well, I mean, I feel lonely a lot. I'm tired of sleeping in my own bed by myself. And if I can go hang out with somebody else for a few hours in a night, or even just have a hookup in a car, that feels better than sleeping by myself, right?
So, yeah, it sure does. So, but does it permanently fix that problem, or does it just temporarily solve it?
It just temporarily solves it.
Okay. Is your goal in life just to go around temporarily whacking down feelings when they crop up? Or would you like to actually learn to mature and grow and be able to hold both pleasant and unpleasant feelings as a way to kind of navigate life and understand, kind of have a greater sense of meaning and purpose?
So what are you asking me?
Do you want any purpose?
Are you asking me what I really want?
Yeah. Do you want purpose? Do you have meaning to your life?
I want someone to love me.
So can you be loved without sticking your penis in somebody?
I can feel like it.
So when did you first begin to believe that that's the only way?
Well, I mean, it's the only thing that's been reliably on demand.
So what you want when you want it is you want to be loved.
Yeah.
But you admit that you're not really being loved in those temporary encounters.
But it's the closest I can get, Scott. It's the closest I can get, because what I really, really want, and if you haven't picked up on, that's how you get to the down the levels of desire. What do you want? What do you really want? What do you really, really want? What I really, really want is someone to see me for me. I want someone to want to be with me because I've felt alone my whole life. And I want someone to come and I'll take the substitute of a hookup, or I'll take the substitute of a short-term relationship that's very harmful, because I can't figure out how to be kind to me in my own body. I've never been taught and have it modeled for me what it looks like for someone to be with me, be safe for me, to hold me, to touch me in a way that has nothing to do with my orgasm, has nothing to do with my genitals, And it has everything to do with my heart and my soul and my body and my mind, and caring for that in a way over time that feels really, really good.
Yeah. And now we're back to attachment, because where did this start? It started in your relationship with your parents, your mother and your father, because you came into the world looking for somebody looking for you.
Well,
and when
isn't
you
that
don't
what they say about girls?
What's that?
Isn't that what they say about girls who are the most sexually promiscuous? They have daddy issues.
And what is it about guys that are sexually promiscuous? They have mommy or daddy issues.
Yeah, usually daddy issues.
Well, I would say probably they have mommy issues too, because the mother relationship is the prototype for all other relationships. What you learn in the first 2 years of your life with your mother, and then your father coming into the picture, is I am seen, I am loved, I am pursued, but I'm also contained. I learned as a 2-year-old that I can't get what I want when I want it, because there are other people in the world. And if I get what I want when I want it, I'm going to grow up to be a 2-year-old, and I'm not going to have any friends. So the loneliness that I feel is going to be magnified the more I pursue my own aims. And that's the problem. If I make the pursuit of my own gratification the aim of my life, I get lonelier and lonelier and lonelier, because nobody wants to be with another person who just pursues their own aims.
And go ahead and finish it.
You and I would not be friends if I tried to overpower you every time we got together. I tried to dominate you. It was all about me. Like, there would be no relationship, and I would be lonely.
Yep. And as we all know, time is a bitch. Time can be a healer, but she can also be a bitch. Because over time, things stop working the way they used to. The gratification I receive from hooking up diminishes. My own sexual function and performance diminishes. There aren't any 80-year-old studs out there having sex 4 or 5 times a night. Your body just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And so what we're doing when we're engaging in hookup sex is we're really in our pain, in our attachment wounds, in our loneliness, exchanging time for the drug of orgasm, for a little bit of dopamine, just a smidge of serotonin, and a whole lot of shame. And it stacks, and it stacks, and it stacks. And at some point, we have to make the decision, is this what I really want?
Yeah. And by the way, it's not just sex. You could do that with drugs. You could do it with alcohol. You could do it with workaholism. You could do it in a lot of different ways. But it is anytime you take a thing and you make it the thing. Yep. And that becomes the source of my meaning and my pursuit and my pleasure and my entire existence, is that thing. Nothing can hold that. Nothing in our lives can hold that, other than this connection to what we call spirituality, is this connection to something transcendent that's ultimately bigger than me. It's either God and other people, or somehow my flourishing as a human being has to be tied to the flourishing of other people, or I'm ultimately going to end up in that place of loneliness because all I care about is myself.
Yep. So let's take that on the road. In fact, we're going to be doing that this week, Scott. We're going to be going to a retreat and having some hookup hugs. Hookup hugs, baby. That's what we do. We're there for a short time, not a long time, but we try to be as physically compassionate, connective as we can. If you're interested in connecting with us, you can check us out at wegotballspod.com. We got a lot of events coming up. Pretty cool things in Nashville and in the mountains in Colorado in the summer. A week-long experience is going to be fun.
Indeed.
So you want to check us out there. You can always find about more how to connect with us, successfulmen.com. But guys, no matter what, make sure you make a plan to take care of yourself. However that is, you need to man up and be one who learns to care for you and teach others how to care for you, just like we do here on We Got Balls.
And you do too.
See you soon.